Hello and welcome to Mindset Kitchen. My name is Diana Paliokaite and I have a wonderful guest in my kitchen today. His name is Alex Staniforth. He is a record-breaking adventurer, ultra-endurance athlete, international keynote speaker, author, and a charity founder. Hello, Alex.
Hi, good to be here. This is exciting.
Thank you so much. You did say at the beginning that this is the first time you have been on a show like that, where you're actually being served food.
Probably the coolest podcast interview I've ever had so far. So I'm really excited to be able to talk and eat at the same time if I can manage that.
Well, I'll make sure that the meal is served towards the end because I know you have an amazing story and we all want to hear. So I have done a little introduction, but would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself, Alex?
So yeah, thank you. So I guess my whole story kind of revolves around overcoming adversity through adventure, through the outdoors. I had a very normal start in life. I was brought up in Chester and I'm an only child, so everything was very comfortable, very just normal, really. Until I was about 9 years old, and I remember waking up under a table in it was a biology class at school, and I just had a seizure. And so 1 minute I was a student, the next minute I was a lesson, and I was diagnosed with actually epilepsy, which was a trigger for lots of different challenges at a really important time in my life. I was badly bullied. I've had a stammer all my life. I was hopeless at sport. I mean, I hated PE at school. I just detested exercise. So in principle, school growing up was a really challenging time for me compared to what I knew at the time. I found the outdoors when I was about 14 on my first hill walk in the Lake District. And then I really found myself. I found a way to fight back, to overcome those challenges. And ultimately that led me to try and attempt Everest twice when I was 18 and 19, which didn't quite go to plan. But since then, that's given me a chance to share my story, to try and inspire businesses and schools and individuals with their own challenges and their own goals as a speaker, as an author. And the charity, which we started 5 years ago, is very much my legacy, to give back and really trying to improve mental health through the power of nature and for other people to access what it's done for me. And when I'm not doing all that, I'm trying to find the time to set my own daft challenges from time to time in the mountains and running a very long way.
Alex, can I just say you are extremely inspirational.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here and for sharing your story with us. Because all of these challenges, it's already been enough for you to deal with the challenges at the time. You set yourself to deal with bigger challenges as if it wasn't enough for you. But you found that freedom, and I'm so glad you're sharing that with. And I think today we will find out a little bit more through your mindset messages. So Alex, thank you for that introduction. I'm going to briefly tell you what I'm going to cook as well.
Great.
Whilst you're seeing here, we have fish. So this is cod, really fresh cod. And I was thinking what to cook for you because Alex has told me he likes Thai, he likes fish, so you're mainly pescatarian. And so I do a lot of Thai, and Thai is one of the popular cuisines for Mindset Kitchen. But I thought today I'll do something a little bit different. Actually, being in the month of Chinese New Year and also snake here, I found this recipe that basically it's called sizzling cod, but what it is, it has quite simple ingredients, but the flavor is absolutely delicious. So it's going to be fish steamed with a side of rice, and there will be a salad dressed with kind of citrusy yuzu ponzu dressing. I love Japanese cuisine as well. I love Thai and Asian. So I tend to mix them all up, and it always comes out really delicious. So I'll start cooking shortly, but I want to introduce these two chilies. I know you said not spicy, so I tested them yesterday, and these chilies, I promise, are not spicy, but they're really necessary for the dish, so they'll have a tiny hint. Are you okay with that?
Perfect. I like a bit of heat. Yeah? Just nothing that's going to blow my head off.
No.
Like in Thailand, they make it really spicy.
Really? So no. So this chili I've tested myself, and it's not going to blow your head off. Perfect. Because we don't want that to happen here, right?
Well, it's all on camera if it does, so it's all good.
So, Alex, I'm going to read your first message, and I will start cooking quite shortly after. So the first message is, I shall either find a way or make one. Tell me more.
So I shall find a way or make one came to me really quite early on in my Everest journey. So basically I set the goal at 18 that I was 17 at the time, that I was going to try and climb the world's highest peak. And there were so many barriers and factors that could have stopped me going towards that goal. My age, just the fact that getting to the mountain was going to cost around £35,000,
Oh
which
my God.
I wasn't going to, get a check signed by my parents. Working in a kitchen, not as a chef, I was a pot washer. Working as a pot washer wasn't going to pay for it.
There will be some washing after.
Perfect. I am well trained in that regard, but essentially, I had so many barriers just stopping me getting to the mountain in the first place. And I remember reading that quote, and it's actually translated from Latin, and I'm not going to get that quote wrong, but it was actually one of the ancient emperors said it, and I should remember it, but my brain's a bit tired. But basically, it was to that extent of, if we can't go over, we've got to either find a way or make one. And when it came to Everest, that was always my mantra: is okay, I will either find a way or make one. Which I think, for me, it feels a really positive, empowering statement. And essentially, I met my first coach when I was about 16, and he had that same kind of effect on me, that whole mindset shift in terms of what was possible. Rather than finding excuses and finding reasons to not do something, when people, even my parents, were saying to me, come on, this is a bit much. It was just a case of never accepting no for an answer. And when I was still at school, I was contacting thousands of companies across the UK trying to find that sponsor to fund the trip, to make it happen. I was sat in boardrooms with multi-million pound CEOs, trying to get them to trying to convince them to take me seriously, having a stammer, with this big crazy goal to climb Everest at 18. And it was relentless, and it was rejection after rejection after rejection. But I shall find a way, I'll make one. And generally, I've had that approach to most obstacles in life. And it's really stressing me out that I can't think of who said it, but it's a very famous quote that I just apply to every challenge in life, really.
It's a powerful quote.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I'm a quote nerd. I love quotes, not because they sound amazing, but I take the quote, try it out, and almost live it.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular quote could be applied to pretty much anything in your life.
Yeah.
And sometimes I go back to the time when I started Mindset Kitchen, for example. It's just appeared daunting to me at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
because I came from a totally different background, professional banking background. I don't have any presenting skills. I don't have any editing skills. I don't even know people who will come and all of these things. And I think secretly, probably the back of my mind, I had that quote going, perhaps said in a different way. But with everything, there is always a way.
Mm-hmm.
And unless, if you can't see it right away, you're either not going to see it. But if you're not going to see it, how about we just make it? And it's absolutely powerful. And I want to know, Alex, when did you use that quote whilst climbing Everest?
Well, Everest didn't really go to plan. So a day before we got to base camp, having actually managed to raise the money and managed to find the way eventually, with, as you say, you just have to trust the process, and eventually got the yes I needed. But then a day before we got to base camp, there was a big avalanche, which sadly killed 16 people, which was the biggest disaster in Everest history at the time. And so I didn't really get a chance to test it. But similarly, when I got back from that trip, it was the case of, oh my God, okay, this wasn't something I expected. This wasn't meant to happen. But I had to find another way to get back there. So I had to raise the money again and do the training and all that. And 2015, I was back for take 2. So very much a case of, okay, how am I going to choose to respond to the situation? I can find an excuse, I can find a reason not to, or I can find a way. And it was very much a case of, like, no one was going to do the work for me. And Tim, our leader, always said to us, doesn't matter how good your team is, you still have to take the step. No one else can do that for you. And I kind of took that same responsibility myself. So I haven't used it on Everest as such. It was just getting me to Everest. My whole life revolved around this pure dedication to the process, and that question was in the back of my mind, and it succeeded, And interestingly, I've never really been able to find that same level of focus ever since, because I really, really wanted that goal. And also, when you're 18, 19, you're very naive. You don't have as many commitments and many things in the way. So it was great just to be so tunnel vision towards this vision, really.
And going back second time, knowing that there was an avalanche and people were killed, is very brave in itself.
Yeah, I mean, the way I saw it was, we were very lucky the first time. We went back home to our families, and that's the most
Mm,
important thing. The biggest success is safety. But I just put it down to it being a freak event. It was a freak event. It was just people being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was tragic. Um, but the following year, the irony was that we were in the icefall when the earthquake hit Nepal, and it was the people at base camp who were sadly killed. So complete
wow.
paradox, and for me, is a metaphor of the risks of life and how if you don't take the step out of base camp, you're never going to find out what's possible because we live in the fear of what if, what could happen, and that ultimately saved our life.
And so, actually, this is nicely tying in with your second mindset message, which I'll read now, and then I'll tell exactly what I'm going to do as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, you were referring to base camp. So, Alex's second mindset message is the biggest risk is staying in the base camp.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Well, exactly that reason. So we left base camp in the early hours of the morning of the 25th of April, and to get to Camp 1, we have to move in the icefall, which is the most dangerous part of the route, where the avalanche had happened the year before, because you're surrounded by seracs and crevasses and lots of stuff that can fall on you. And when I'm in my talks, I show a video on my GoPro of me walking across this step ladder, and it's terrifying because people are looking at this massive black hole beneath me and going, "Oh God, I can do that," and fear, the natural fear instinct takes over, and I use it as a metaphor for like who would cross a ladder. What would you be willing to cross a ladder for? What are you moving towards? What are you moving away from? Because that is essentially the art of motivation. It's moving towards or away from something. And basically that day we had most of our team were at Camp 1. I was about half an hour below that when the earthquake hit. And we got hit by a big blast of powder in the Western Cwm. And that was the first time in my life at 19. I was thinking, this is it, game over. And we were trapped up there at Camp 1 for 2 days. And ultimately, it seems ironic, but actually, 22 people at base camp were actually killed by a much bigger avalanche triggered by the earthquake that had hit base camp like a bomb blast. It was off the scale, and we didn't really know where to start. And when we got down 2 days later, we saw tents, buried under like a foot of ice and rock. And in reality, people think that staying at base camp is the safest place to be. It's a bit like when you go up the mountain, that's when stuff normally goes wrong. But that day, base camp happened to be the bit that was destroyed, and we were on the mountain. So the way I see that in life is how that quote applies is actually, we don't take those risks, if we don't take the steps towards the things that we want to do, whether that's moving house or a job promotion or starting something new or a goal we've always wanted to do but never tried, we're never going to find out what's possible. So that's kind of where the quote comes from, is that sense of base camp is our comfort zone. Base camp is that familiar, safe place. But the biggest risk is that we don't discover what's possible. That's kind of where I came up with the whole concept. And it doesn't make sense, but when you hear it in practice, I think it really gets people thinking.
It did make sense to me as well, actually, Alex. But I was imagining this conversation happening, and I knew I was going to say this, but you actually already kind of mentioned it. But I was going to take a level down and say what we would do with this quote in the normal day-to-day scenario, and you just said exactly that. You don't have to find yourself in such an extreme scenario to apply. But essentially, if I haven't launched Mindset Kitchen, you wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't have become a better chef. I wouldn't have met amazing people and created these opportunities. And actually, I actually don't know. I can't even imagine how would it be for me if I haven't grown that much. Because that base camp, however comfortable it was, it didn't make me grow. It didn't make me explore, experience. And all of these experiences happened because I left my base camp. And base camp is a new way of saying comfort zone.
Yeah.
It's actually, comfort zone is such a used a lot, and come out of your comfort zone. It's everywhere. So the base camp is your house, where you live, your comfort.
Your job, your
job.
area,
Exactly. And many people, we are, not leaving our base camp because it's good. We may be happy, or maybe we're not happy here, but we don't really want to kind of take that risk. And and you will be met with all sorts, I don't know, snakes, avalanche, and all sorts. But as your first message says, you will find a way. So it's beautiful.
Thank you. I think when you have that mindset, as you said before, you feel like you can take on anything, like nothing can really bother you. But then the problem is then you find a challenge that you haven't encountered, and you encounter those same feelings before of, oh my God, fear, because I don't have a confidence of dealing with this situation. You just have to apply the same principles, really. And I'm planning a challenge for this year, and I found myself recently thinking, oh my God, I feel like the 16-year-old Alex, 13 years ago. It's like, how have I not got better? But I have, it's just that the bar's got higher. So that for me is a perfect sign of that.
And it's a perfect sign. You keep on growing, you keep on moving, because I always find myself, if I come up with an idea or some sort of scenario in my head, and if it doesn't really make me feel fear, or I'm not scared, or don't have a little anxiety, or lack of confidence about it even, I feel like it's not even worth it to go ahead with it. So my feelings meant to be fear, they dictate me then in a way, this is the right path to go for. And with many things, if I don't feel the fear, I don't really kind of go for it. It's my way of my body saying this is going to make you grow.
Yeah, I say to people when people say to me, like, what should I do if I'm doubting myself doing X, Y, Z? And I say, well, actually, accept the doubt is a necessary feeling. Yeah. That's a sign that you're doing something that is not familiar. I say get comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah. Now it's not like that all the time. Don't get me wrong. I love having, home comforts and all those pleasures, and having a holiday away in the sun somewhere, just relaxing. I think I'd like to think that I have earned that right sometimes. If I was doing that all the time, for sure, I'd get very restless. And this is why I feel I need to do a big challenge this year, because I feel like I've not really pushed that for a long time. I'm talking about something I did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to be living what I preach and being out there and getting in the arena.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think having a break from fear is good, but not for too long.
Of course, and there has to be balance, as you say, and recovery and reflection and all the other things. Right, whilst you were talking, I was doing something here. I know you don't drink. This is a little bit of sake, but sake will evaporate.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
And so I brushed cod with sake and a bit of olive oil. What I'm going to do is going to put this fish to steam in here. And it's going to steam in 10-15 minutes. So I was trying to time everything so the fish wouldn't be sitting here cold whilst we're having a chat. Alex, can you tell me, what's your next challenge that will make you leave your base camp?
I think it's not just leaving base camp, it's like flying me to the moon, Well, it's still been shaped, so I can't really say much about it at the moment because it's not been launched properly and there's a lot I need to work out.
So the next shell rocket then?
Yeah. Well, it's staying firmly in planet Earth in the UK, and it's going to be a UK-based challenge involving a lot of running. And essentially, it's going to be harder than anything I've done before, quite rightly. And it's not a mindset message, but one thing I've always felt is that if you can't go a week without thinking about something on a regular basis, then you need to do it. It's a sign that that's your calling and you shouldn't ignore that. So I want to, essentially, life kept getting in the way. I've wanted to do this for a while, but then I had long COVID for a year, so I had to pack had to start from scratch again. I went from running 100 miles to running, 4 times 30 seconds, because that's all my body could cope with. So obviously that wasn't the year to do this. And then last year I was so busy with speaking and my coast to coast runs, that kind of got in the way again. And this year in the charity, we've got this campaign to raise $500,000 by June, which is my 30th birthday, just to highlight the impacts, just on mental health and suicide in young people being the biggest killer of people under 35. So I wanted to mark that by doing this big crazy challenge. And I think nowadays to fundraise, you've got to do something that's a bit outrageous. I'm hoping that this will fill that gap, really. But it's just 10 years on since Everest. It's just that full circle moment, really. And it feels like now is the time. But I have the challenge now. It was easier when I was 18 because I don't have a speaking career, and if I'm away for 2 months on a challenge, I can't I can't do talks. So it's actually a lot harder nowadays. But I'm thinking that, like anything, I mean, I've got the evidence, I've got the confidence, I've got the proof that it's doable. I just need to find a way to make one, really.
So, can you tell me which part is the most daunting, without obviously revealing what you will be doing exactly?
I would say it's not so much any particular part of the challenge. I mean, I failed and failed lots of times. I've almost built a speaking career off failing Everest, but it's just that there's so many people involved, so many people on the team. The biggest fear is letting them down because of not being able to complete it, whether that because of health or an injury or something else or whatever. I think the challenge is very doable. It's doable. It's not sensible, but most of these things aren't. It's doable. I think, as always, it's fear of letting people down, and I think it's just this fear of the next few months of, can I raise the money to make it even possible? You invest so much into it, you take that risk, but if you don't commit yourself, then you're going to fail anyway. So it is that. I think I'm very health conscious, and I had a seizure on my coast to coast run last year, which really kind of shook me up. No pun intended. And I think that was quite a shock to the system. And I think when you're doing ultra running and ultra marathons, you are pushing your body to a new level.
Yeah.
And there's always a worry about that, about the health side of these things, but there's a lot of people out there who've done incredible things and they've proved what's possible. So I think I'm just using them as my inspiration. I think you've got to have at least a few people as your benchmark.
I agree.
People that
captained.
And maybe not something that people have done mainstream, but if you're trying to go into uncharted territory, I need to know there's a couple of people, mere mortals like me, that have attempted something and put their body through a similar thing, just to know it's doable. But I don't want to do something that's been done before. I want to do things that are going to really raise the bar in terms of what's possible, and I still have that fear of health, because my biggest fear is losing the ability to do these things that I love doing, because it's a big part of my identity. And I know I'm young and fit, but if I couldn't run in the mountains anymore, then that would be a very difficult thing to sort of navigate as well.
That's incredible. So you're taking so much risks as well, and there are all of these fears, and that's what I say sets out majority of people. You could just be easily sitting in your base camp and being happy, but you
choose the painful bits.
You're choosing the painful bit. And why do you think that is, Alex? Is that stemmed from that 14-year-old boy who found it, what's possible, and obviously I imagine at the end of it you get the most incredible feeling in the world.
To an extent, you are chasing the fix. You're chasing the hits.
That's your dopamine fix.
Yeah, but the problem with that approach is that it's not sustainable. You have to keep getting another one. It's like, I kind of realized the reason I kind of turned away from Everest is because I realized that actually, like, I was looking for validation elsewhere, and even if I climbed Everest, I was going to need something else. You always need another challenge, because it's a bit like when you hit those kind of milestones in life. People are never satisfied, and then they get the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. You've got to find that validation from something bigger. So to an extent, there is an element of, I love the kick that you get from completing it, and doing these things, and a sense of relief and contentment you get. But also, it's that battle, because I've been very kind of impatient for a while, and I feel like I'm spending a lot of time talking about stuff rather than doing the stuff. So there is that feeling I have to do it rather than necessarily I want to do it. But then
it's almost like responsibility.
Yeah, I do get excited at the prospect of completing it. The actual challenge itself is often just suffering, and it's, you push yourself to a level that isn't recommended. But I love the storytelling aspect of that. I love being able to share it on social media and then in words and talks and books afterwards. You know, I love the opportunities that come from these things. But ultimately, what's driving me? Because people ask this, you've got to have a strong enough reason inside you to drive you forward when things get tough. And when I was younger, I mean, there was a lot less at stake. I think there is still very much the inner child in me, which is that bullied kid at school that didn't have any self-esteem and self-confidence. And the outdoors was a way of disproving that theory. And I realised that, you know, if you're looking for validation from other people in our lives, whether that's in our careers or in our sport or online, that you're never quite going to get there. You're never going to, it's not a sustainable source of motivation. It's got to come from inside you.
Yeah.
And so for me, it very much is about living an extraordinary life now, because I realised that at a very young age how fragile life is, and I don't want to leave any stone unturned, you know. And this for me is how I can ensure I live a full life and I achieve my full potential, you know, and using that as a way to leave something bigger behind through, you know, trying to inspire people and through the charity. So it's very much in line with my life purpose. You know, that's what drives me now, is that need to try and achieve extraordinary things, you know, and to see what's possible. It's, you know, a lot of pain for a long-term contentment, really. But you've got to enjoy the journey. It's not just about the outcome as well, you know. And then it's nice afterwards, because then you feel like you can have a few years of just feeling content. Yeah, almost like you've earned the right to just chill for a bit, and then you can run just for your own sake and for fun of it, really.
Alex, we'll have to take it a level down as well. You're operating and the challenge is at such a high level, and I know what you're talking is relatable in every aspect in life, and that's the beauty of it. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about something when you were telling me why you're doing it, and whether it's for that short-term goal or long-term. I remember doing a few weeks ago my first fitness competition.
I think I saw. Congrats, well done.
Thank you. Well, that was a challenge for myself purely. And you know what? It's not a challenge to get validation from someone or feel good and show to others something. It was purely my own internal challenge. Mm-hmm. to say, well, there was a doubt because I'm not that fit. I'm not training and I'm not doing these competitions. I never done. I just kind of never thought about doing it. Mm-hmm. But one day, because you are who you're surrounded with, and obviously I'm surrounded by extremely inspirational friends that I have in my circle. And then one of them, I said, do you think I could do this fitness challenge? Bearing in mind, this person has been doing those challenges for many years. And then he said, yeah, well, yes, of course. And obviously I was doubting myself, but it was 3 months to prepare as well for it. And I thought, yeah, I'll do it. And I'll do it for myself. And I was testing myself along the way, because what you say, you have to walk the talk, basically. Mm-hmm. And I was testing myself. How am I going to prepare for this? Because training was very hard. It was difficult. It's nothing like I've ever done before. Mm-hmm. And I did it. And you know what? I want to do something more now. And I want to do something bigger. And again, it's only for me. Because what it does to me is it's how I show up in the world. My thoughts, my behaviors, my attitudes, my can-do attitude. Mm-hmm. And so whilst I'm not doing such extreme scenarios like yourself, I can relate to that feeling. Mm-hmm. And I can relate to one day I will be that kind of person who tried the things, who pushed myself and wasn't really afraid of all those fears, because essentially anything could happen by crossing the road or driving the car. Mm-hmm. And if we focus on all of these fears that are possible, mm-hmm. of course, we will not experience the actual beauty of the life and mm-hmm. of life and the growth and the opportunities it gives to us, because they are everywhere. Yeah. It's just up to us to take them.
You have to create your own opportunities, and that reminded me, actually, I was doing a talk recently where somebody asked me, are there any sports that I wouldn't do? And mm-hmm. I'd actually say I am quite a risk-averse person. I'm not like a daredevil. I'm not one of these kind of adrenaline
Wouldn't
junkies.
think so.
Um, but like, I am a very, very big worrier, and I try and reduce the risk to a level that that I'm happy with. And for example, I wouldn't base jump. I wouldn't skydive. I wouldn't do anything like that where the risks are just so high. There's so much objective danger. With Everest, to an extent, you can kind of carry the safety net up the hill. That's what Tim Olid always used to say, is that you can kind of carry the safety net up with you. Whereas on something like K2, you've got, I think I read somewhere it's a 1 in 4 death rate,
Wow.
and I can't justify that. I don't want it enough, to be willing to do that. So it's challenging yourself, but in a way that you're willing to challenge for, something worth that you really, really want to do. I think that's kind of what drives me, in almost a sense of I probably shouldn't have come back from Everest, but I did. So I felt like I had a responsibility and a duty. I owed it to the Sherpas and to everyone in Nepal that I, went out there and did some cool stuff with it, and I gave something back. And that's kind of what is my driving force now, I suppose.
That's beautiful, and I agree. We're not sitting here with Alex and telling, go and do crazy things, right? I think Alex is using his experience really nicely to inspire people to apply this in a day-to-day. And I think having a big mindset like that, approaching day-to-day things, is going to help us much more and inspire us to actually live and do things that we want to do, not necessarily the ones that could kill us so easily.
Ideally.
Ideally. So I'm going to read your third message, Alex, and I'm going to tell a little bit what I'm doing here next.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you like Japanese and that, because I use soy sauce here. So this little sauce that I've made here, it's really simple: soy sauce and toasted sesame oil. This will go on the fish. It's now steamed and ready. Now here in this little pot, I have peanut oil. And the peanut oil, it's absolutely a flavorless oil, and you can handle very high heat temperatures without producing the chemicals. It's going to go on top of the fish and these 3 ingredients that is going to sizzle, and then these ingredients will essentially have a little kick. So it's kind of like it softens it and also produces the flavors. And then the fish, it's in its own simplicity. The fish is the beauty that will hold all these flavors. So the sauce is being heated up now. The fish is done. I've turned it off so that it's 10 degrees lower, which means it's still slightly cooking, but it's not going to overcook. I'm not pretending it to be some sort of master chef now. And what I've done here is cut chili, spring onions, ginger. And the salad here, I'm going to also dress it with one of my favorites. So I've got spinach, and I'm going to dress with yuzu over here, a bit of ginger, and some soy sauce as well, and olive oil. And I'm going to mix it up and serve it to you. So in case we do not have a chance to interfere what I'm doing next. Okay, Alex. So this third message, which is beautiful as well: we can't choose our challenges, only our mindset.
Yeah, for me it feels quite a simple one, but I'll explain that. So I think it stems back to that early childhood thing of actually that day in the hills, that first walk up a mountain at 14. When you're kind of curious, you're naive, the world's your oyster kind of thing. I remember this feeling of, okay, actually, we can't control what's thrown at us. And, it wasn't my fault that I had this epilepsy diagnosis, and then I had years of bullying and all the anxiety that came with that, and the stammer, which is something I still have to live with now. But I could choose my response to that. And I chose that I wasn't going to be defeated or defined by that. Actually, I was just going to use that as an opportunity. And so now, like when anything happens in life, when I get hit by any setback or whatever, my initial focus now is, okay, what's the opportunity here? How do I respond to this? And again, you can choose to be a victim, you can choose to complain, you can choose to blame the situation or think, oh, poor me, which is fine, but it's not very helpful. And I think that power of choice in a situation, if you feel you have no choice over your situation, it's very detrimental to our well-being and our purpose and our identity. And it stems back from childhood, but it applies everywhere in life. Is okay, stuff will happen to us that we don't expect. You know, most of the challenges that we, do, we are choosing to do them. We can go home at any point if they get uncomfortable. Which more for me is kind of more of a proactive resilience, whereas there is more reactive resilience, which is when the things happen to you that you don't expect, whether that be a major life event, for example, or an avalanche. And the power of choice, I think, is really powerful. For me, was the way I turned what could have been a very limiting situation into growth. So I guess I would challenge people, whatever like their experience at the moment, just to think of actually, how am I going to respond to this? Because if we focus on the things that are outside of our control, it makes us more stressed. We feel very reactive, rather than focusing on the things that we can control. And it might be one small thing. It might just be, deciding to show up every day, to go and brush your teeth. It might be going to the gym every day when you really don't feel like it. When everything else around you is chaos. I think if you can take control of a situation, I think it's a very powerful thing.
I agree. I really relate with that. It's one of my ways of living, to be honest, because I had a lot of challenges in my life since the childhood, to be honest. And there was some bullying as well and so on. And it's only now I'm reflecting to extent why did I react in that way? How come I've came out on top? Because I could have gone a completely different way.
Yeah.
Because of what's happened to us, right? And then I realized it was always subconscious choice. But what now I'm doing is choosing consciously, because I realized I always have a choice, no matter what. And that choice is in this how to react, how to feel, what to do next.
Yeah.
And when my husband passed away, I remember it's been 3 weeks now that he's gone, and I remember this scenario a lot because I recall very clearly that I said to myself, well, I can be a victim and cry, and I can be miserable. I can, because that's how I feel, actually. I feel in pain, and I can listen to this pain and let it guide me. Or I can, don't want to even swear, but I can just take this and use this to make something amazing, because I think that's what my husband would like me to do. He would like to look at me and say, come on, use this pain and make it big. Make it as big as your pain. And so I found myself having those two choices. And literally, I decided to use this pain to make my life the best I could possibly have, and to inspire, and also to be inspiration to my son. And I realized I was so powerful because I had a choice. And, I don't know how it's like to be in a situation where you have no choice. But when we have choices all the time, and majority of the time we choose something that's easy. And obviously, many times it's easy to succumb to a challenge. Because I think that's the human nature. We drawn to something easy, drawn to more negative. But having that kind of moment in time where everything is happening to you, you just pause. It's almost like finding that little minute and say, wait a minute, I can choose. And I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do completely opposite. And actually, many times you surprise yourself, because that opposite is so unnatural. So for me, for example, if I'm still referring to that situation, to be smiling in this scenario is really not right. What do people will think? Why I'm so happy? Your husband died. Why are you happy? Or why are you doing these things? Take time. And so they were so unnatural to all of us, because what's accepted, right? And I thought, no, I'm happy. Not that my husband passed away. I'm happy I have a choice here to still live, to make this life the best I can. And I'm giving this, chance to still do it. So why wouldn't I be happy? Yeah. So that's what I was relating when you were sharing that message.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and that's the perfect example of that. And but so much courage comes into that as well, that choice. Yeah, but it takes courage to make those choices.
It does, isn't it? And what would be your advice? Let's say, how do you make that choice in your view?
Consider the alternatives. Simple as just think, well, if I don't do this, what's the alternative? That is often enough to motivate you to go a certain way, I think.
Wow. Consider the alternatives. So, and I guess when we're struck with a challenge, we almost will take you to the first message. There will always be a way how to come out of that challenge. And I think for me, I have had a few challenges lately as well. And there's no current way for it. But sometimes when there is no current way and I cannot see it, I always know there is a reason behind that challenge. Yeah. And I haven't found it yet, but 100%, there's never been a challenge in my life that wouldn't have a reason.
I'm the same as well. So I know I couldn't add in the fourth message, but one thing I often say is just to trust the process. And yes. I like that because when there are things where, okay, there isn't really a positive outcome to a certain situation, but actually I trust that it's going to fit in somewhere in the life plan, and I won't understand why it's been sent to me. You know, it might be, for example, like having long COVID was a really horrible situation, and it wasn't something I could really control. I mean, obviously, how fast I recovered was very much in my control, but it taught me to slow down, and I started to wild swim, so it got me into a new sport. That that ended up becoming a challenge called the Frog Rain Round, which is like a swim run challenge in the Lake District. And then doing that challenge then led to a film, and the film toured last year, and there's other things that have come off the back of that I'm unaware of, you know, and like I wouldn't have never done that if I hadn't have had long COVID. But what it taught me is how to really manage my energy better. And now, like I've always been a people pleaser, but when your energy was so limited, you can't do that anymore. So actually what it did was really force me to prioritize, which I think is a really positive long-term effect. And the avalanche on Everest, I mean, obviously that I don't know why that happened. I think it's purely fate and coincidence, but I decided to give it meaning by trying to turn it into something positive. And you know, that is hopefully what I've done. As you say, you know, you've got to find the meaning or create it. So I think if you trust the process, then actually when these things happen, they're a lot less scary because you just know there's something good that's going to come from this.
Always. And many times I remember suggesting that to people. Just please trust the process. The best thing you can do is make a good choice that is not going to make everything worse. So choose what to do next. And it might be very uncomfortable, not easy. And do not focus too much on why is this happening to me. And another thing that I sometimes talk on podcast as well is not why is this happening to me, it's why this happening. So taking away yourself from that victim feeling to understanding the situation. And when I was in that situation, I was like that, Alex. I'm in such a shock. And then I was like, why is this happening? And I don't know how I did it, because I know I could have easily said, why me? But I was looking for that reason so badly. It can't be just for no reason. My amazing husband gone and I'm alone. No, there must be a good reason. And I think I may have found it, but also by finding the reason is my life completely changed now. And I'm still growing. And I think that reason is going to become even bigger, I know. And I'm just growing as an individual towards that reason. And and I think my husband will be proud of that. So I'm handling very hot oil, Alex.
Okay, wow.
What I'm going to do here, before I forget, I'm going to pour...
Living life on the edge. I'm liking the risk involved with this meal. This
loads
is
of
very
risks.
Adventurous.
You know what? There was no waiver or anything that you had to sign, so I'm a little bit worried.
Don't worry. I mean, I guess I do adventure, so I'm immune to risk forms and waivers. Don't you worry.
Good. So what I'm going to do is slightly pour this very hot oil, and as you can see, this all the toppings. They're losing they crunchiness and they're becoming softer.
Wow, that's cool.
And that's it. So the oil itself is tasteless, and it's not too much of it, but it's mixing up with the soy and toasted sesame oil. and it's starting to smell. At the end, there'll be a little bit more soy sauce if you would like. And I'm going to put some salt. I'm going to put black pepper. And Alex, I'm going to serve you this dish.
Wow.
Hope you enjoy.
Sorry, I will. Thank you very much.
Here you go.
That's amazing.
With a side of rice, a side of spinach, manchtut, and avocado salad with yuzu, ginger, and soy sauce.
Wow.
And there was a coconut milkshake at some point there as well.
That was
Hopefully you
gone. That
enjoyed.
was perfect. Thank you. Wow, it's like being back in Thailand. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So Alex, thank you so much for being here and for bringing your beautiful life story and for making us feel like, you know what, we should do these things. We should go for these things. And your message, I shall either find a way or make one, is incredible. The biggest risk is staying in the base camp. And we can't choose our challenges, but our mindset. And it could be more true, couldn't be more true, because life will throw many challenges at us all the time. I think you're one of those people who probably sometimes looking for them yourself.
Often.
Often. I sometimes myself find that I'm looking for challenges because they make me grow and they inspire me myself. And I know the ripple effect, as you and me perhaps will share today. So thank you so much for being here. I had a true pleasure cooking for you and chatting to you, and I hope this is not the last time, and I wish you all the best with your next endeavor.
Thank you.
Hope to hear about it soon.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for watching. We will share the details on the website, how to get in touch and follow Alex's journey, because this guy is inspirational and I'm so glad to be part of it. Thank you, Alex.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.